and welcome to the Polyvagal Orgasm. I'm Laura Geiger. Thank you for being here. Thank you for saying yes to this course. I love this material, and it has really changed my experience in my relationships, in my work, in my sexuality. It's been huge for me, and I just want to pass it on to as many people as I can. Now, what I have not mentioned in any of the promotional materials online is that this is actually pretty advanced nervous system work. The other polyvagal courses I do are complex, but it can really be boiled down into simple ideas. This one is more difficult. Sex is sort of its own special thing. And so as the weeks progress, you will understand what I mean. But that is not to say that you're going to struggle with this or that this is too much for you to handle. I hopefully will be presenting this in a way where it feels safe, where it feels easy, where it feels like, yeah, I can do that. Oh, that makes sense. It's another thing too, we women are sort of in silos about this. We talk about sex with our friends, but maybe not in this particular way. So I hope to be introducing you to vocabulary so that we can make sense of our experience in a way that maybe we haven't before. That said, it very well could be that this material is extremely overwhelming and feels awful and feels like you can't do it. And that is fine and completely understandable. So you have these videos forever and ever, and you can take as much time as you need. The way that it's structured is that I'm sending out this video every Monday, or if you're buying it in the future, you have all the videos. And I'm giving assignments or homework between each video. But that is not to say that you need to be on top of it. Dude, the puns are out of control. Really gonna try to ignore it when I say things that are puns, but it's very difficult. Okay, it does not mean, just because I'm assigning these things, does not mean that you need to keep up or that your system is necessarily primed to go at a certain speed, at the speed that I'm suggesting. So I'm giving you permission to take 2 years, if you need to with this, to start and then put it away and not look at it for a long time, or to take 3 weeks between each video. You do whatever feels like it's the right pace for you. That's really important. Okay. The way that these 4 weeks will go is that this is the first week about the theory in general and how the theory applies to sex, and what we can glean from polyvagal theory to help us improve our sexual experience. And then the second week, we're going to break down what orgasm is, what the science says it means for us, what the chemical components are, and how the vagus nerve plays a role in orgasm. The third week is going to be about how to get safer, how to create an environment of safety during sex, how to create environments of safety outside of sex, how to improve your neural pathways of connection across all your relationships, because that itself will inform your sex life. And then week 4 is going to be all the other stuff. So these life circumstances that play a role in how safe we can feel in relationship and in sex. Definitely postpartum and definitely trauma. These kinds of life circumstances that are also happening at the same time, because sex is not always in a vacuum. Polyvagal theory was developed in 1994 by Stephen Porges, but it actually got its earliest origins way back in 1969 with his work around newborns and heart rate variability. But it emerged on the scene as a scientific theory in 1994. Now, since then, it has really exploded with its clinical applications because it makes a lot of sense. And working this way is very, very effective for allowing people to heal from their trauma, to be able to have safe, connective relationships, and be able to take risks in their lives and feel really engaged in the social sphere around them. So, what it's basically saying is that our autonomic nervous system state, so the stuff in our nervous system that we don't have control over, that operates on its own, the autonomic nervous system state determines our behavior and our psychology, determines the way we act and live. So, once we begin to think of ourselves and our behaviors as stemming from what state we're in, then it makes a lot of sense that we can just adjust the state we're in and then change our behavior. And it really does work. We used to conceive of the autonomic nervous system as having two parts, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Fight, flight, and rest and digest, so on and off. But what Porges brought to the table with polyvagal theory is that the parasympathetic nervous system is a bit more complex than that it actually has two different pathways with two very different functions. They both have to do with the vagus nerve, hence polyvagal theory. So the first organizing principle of polyvagal theory is hierarchy. So these three now, we're not just in two, right? These three pathways are in a hierarchy of response. So this response is happening in us to our body cues and to cues from the environment. So Deb Dana explains this with the metaphor of a ladder. So that's what we're going to use for this, to explain this hierarchy of these three autonomic states. So at the top of the ladder is actually where we want to be spending most of our time. At the top of the ladder is, just like at the top of the body, this ventral vagal system. It's also called the social engagement system. And this is when we feel safe. So mammals evolved in a pretty unsafe environment, and so we have this hierarchy ready to go to keep us safe. So we use this autonomic ladder going up and down it in order to come back up to the top and spend most of our time in social engagement. So social engagement is where we are together because mammals feel safer in numbers. It's when we are feeling relaxed and calm, but also engaged with our environment. It's when we can teach and to learn and talk and to listen and feel good. Okay. When we pick up on a cue from the body or from the environment, from another person, that maybe there's something happening here that is unsafe, we begin to engage our protective mechanism of fight-flight. So this hierarchy says that social engagement is at the top. It's our most recent. You can think of it as being at the top of the ladder. It might be a little bit confusing with a ladder because sometimes people think at the bottom is where you feel really good when you're not climbing on top of the ladder and when you're on the ground. But social engagement is at the top because you could think about it as then we can see, right? Then we are at our peak of being able to engage and see what's around us because we're at the top of the ladder. But also that it's the top of the body. These facial cues where the heart is joined with the face and the voice via the vagus nerve as the top of the body, but also that it's our most recent evolutionary development. So we can think of it as being at the top of the food chain. So when we are picking up on a cue of danger, we are dropping down and engaging our first line of defense, which is the fight-flight or the sympathetic nervous system. There is a lot more to this theory, but I don't want to get too bogged down in it. I'm going to make this as simple as possible to understand. So yes, there are more things that you can read about and that many of you probably already know about, but for the purposes of this video, our first line of defense is coming down into our next most recent evolutionary development of fight-flight. So that's when we are hoping to resolve the danger that we have picked up on by fighting or running. And we fight or run by getting stronger and faster and bigger. And so the way that we do that is through adrenaline and cortisol. So these things can make us run fast and lift the car up off the child and do these things that we couldn't normally mobilize to do in our calm state. So hopefully our bodies are betting that this dump of adrenaline will help us overcome whatever the danger is, get away from it or defeat it. But polyvagal theory says that if that doesn't work, then we go further down the ladder into that third autonomic state, the other branch of the parasympathetic nervous system, the bottom of the vagus nerve, which is called the dorsal vagal, or the dorsal vagal complex, or commonly known as freeze. So, feeling good, danger, danger, danger. Does it resolve? Can we come back up to feeling good again? Or if it doesn't work, are we then under life threat, where we come down into freeze? So, social engagement, mobility, lots of energy to be able to try and overcome whatever the danger is. And then this energy becomes collapsed, compounded into the freeze state. So this is the idea of the hierarchy. And the cool thing about the ladder metaphor is that you can really see that this compounded energy, this collapsed, this freeze state needs to go back through mobility to come back up to social engagement. There's not really a workaround. Right now. So the second organizing principle of polyvagal theory is neuroception. And this is very important to know because what is triggering our movement up and down this ladder is often unconscious. It also happens in 100 milliseconds, extremely fast. So when you are picking up on cues of danger and cues of safety in order to get back up that ladder or in order to self-protect, that's happening underneath your awareness. So that's why we behave in ways that seem really weird sometimes. Or our children behave in ways that seem really weird and counterintuitive. It's because they're not aware of what's happening. These things are happening so fast, all in service of our safety. And the third organizing principle is co-regulation. And what this means is that we travel up and down this ladder through our experiences with other people. Being with other people is a biological imperative. We regulate ourselves, we feel better through our connection to other people, and there is no way around that. Being together and having this reciprocal coming up the ladder is a need that sustains life. And so isolation and self-regulation it does not work and will not work long term. We must be with each other because again, we're supposed to be spending a lot of our time up here in social engagement and not down the ladder. And the way that we do that is through connection with other people. And so what I've just described, this process that I have just described, is really the foundation of our lived experience. It is the neural platform upon which we live. Now, how much time you are spending in each state and how easy it is for you to move up and down this ladder depends a lot on your experience in the past. It depends on what you've inherited from your ancestors. It depends on your time that you spent in the womb. It depends on your childhood attachment. It depends on the relationships that you've had, the experiences that you've had in relationship with other people. And so you might be a person who it's easy to stay in social engagement. It is easy to connect with other people. That is your default. And then you could also be a person who spends a lot of time down the ladder, who struggles to connect, who is in patterns of disconnection and self-protection and can't seem to have an easy time staying up here connected with other people. What happens as you move down the ladder is a whole bunch of biological processes, one of which is that the energy needed for cognition is redirected. So when we have to mobilize for fight-flight, we need the energy that we normally use for digestion and for immunity and for thinking. We now need it to be redirected other places. And so when we come down the ladder, our cognition goes offline. That's very important for you to know in general, because when people are behaving in erratic and illogical ways, when they are upset, that's why. And the saying, when you know better, you do better, is not always true. Because when I am activated, when I am triggered, when I'm coming down my ladder, my knowing better goes offline. And it becomes very difficult to think my way through my problem. It becomes very difficult to communicate with another person, to fight well, because that part of my brain is no longer accessible to me. And we can think of the ladder in terms of a fight. So if we're up at the top in social engagement, we're connected and feeling good, and then our partner maybe says something judgmental, or even has this flash of a look across her face. Then we can neurocept or perceive underneath our conscious awareness, oh crap, something has happened. I'm gonna get judged, for example. And that can make us start to come down our ladder. And then we can either get out of there, flee, get in a car and leave, or start a fight. And we might not even know why we have started the fight, because the flash across the face or the word of judgment may not have really registered in our conscious awareness. And so we might start the fight, or whatever that normal pattern of connection or disconnection is between the two of you. And if that feels better, and if you can now come back up your ladder and engage the parasympathetic nervous system to come back up and reconnect, then this fighting, we can call it that it worked, right? The other person can react and say, what? No, of course I didn't mean that. And come here. And you can begin to do things that you know will reconnect you. Maybe the apology will work. Anyway, so then you can come back up the ladder. But if that technique did not work, then you'd be coming down your ladder further into shutdown, into freeze. And this is when you collapse and when you give up and when you are then totally unreachable. You've cocooned yourself, right? Dissociation. And that's a very hard place to come back from. But especially as children, that can be a place that feels really, really safe. Because, maybe the tantruming and the yelling and the running, it's not so effective. It doesn't get you to feel safer. It doesn't relieve whatever the distress is. And so lots of times if we grow up in a tumultuous environment, we're very familiar with this coming down to the bottom of the ladder and checking out. So when we have a lot of safety available to us, a lot of safe relationship, and a lot of space and a lot of time, we can begin to slowly come out of this freeze state by mobilizing a little bit at a time. So a kid who's dissociated, or you when you're really upset and collapsed and unreachable by your partner, or by other people who you're in relationship with, family and friends, a slow mobilization, a slow release of that condensed, collapsed energy is what is going to bring you up that ladder. And then once you're up into fight flight and you have that mobilization again, you have that energy moving again, that's when you expend the energy in order to come back up into social engagement. What fight flight typically looks like is anger and aggression, rigid posture, confrontational behavior, flushed, lots of blood flow into the face, rapid breathing, rapid heartbeat, right? These kinds of things that are associated with being able to run really far and really fast, or being able to conquer physically. Dilated pupils. Whereas freeze, shutdown, is associated with a collapsed posture, right? You look like you have given up. Slow breathing, no eye contact, tired and heavy, difficult to concentrate, spacey. And then in between those is how you look and feel in social engagement, which is halfway in between rigid and collapsed. It's just, you're in touch with your body. You're firm, you're present, you're curious. You naturally have facial expression, and you naturally have this up and down pitch, which is called prosody, in your voice. So the way that you present yourself, the way that you look and act when you're in social engagement, that behavior is what is sending cues to other people that they can also be safe, that you're a safe person, and that they can co-regulate with you to come up their ladders as well. So the very ways we behave in social engagement are the very ways that we communicate safety to other people. What's really unique about sex, what makes this advanced learning, is that during sex, we have to be in more than one autonomic state at a time, in more than one place on the ladder. Typically, the way that sex works, is that for the beginning of it, when we are beginning to connect, when we are beginning to come closer and get intimate, we are fully in social engagement. When sex shifts into gear, then we are needing to move. We are needing to have this mobilization energy to do it, right? To be engaged in that way. Much similar to play and tag, where you cannot really run around fully in social engagement. You have to be using this mobilization energy to run and to move. So the trick is to be able to stay connected. So stay at the top of the ladder, maintain this sense of safety and connection with your partner while you are bringing in the sympathetic mobilization energy. And then near the end, during orgasm and after orgasm, typically women are in a state of freeze for evolutionary, biological, reproductive reasons. But we have to learn how to be in freeze at the bottom of the ladder and still in social engagement. And that's called straddling states. We have to be able to do both for it to feel good. Now, being able to stay in social engagement in general is challenging for people with trauma, which is basically all of us, right? It's challenging to stay connected and to enjoy being in a relationship. It's challenging. And so sex puts that challenge really to the test. Because straddling states, being in more than one autonomic state at a time, is even more difficult. It's even more complex. And if we don't have loads and loads of co-regulation experience all through our childhood, and if we don't have many experiences of being still and not afraid, and of being in motion and not afraid, then straddling states is challenging to our systems. So let's talk about what mobilization during sex looks like without safety. So when you're in the mobilization part of the sexual experience and you're not connected and you're not in social engagement too, what does that look like? So you can be tense and anxious, even shaky. If you think about that mobilization energy and you think about that adrenaline, and you might get shaky. This rigid posture, feeling overwhelmed, feeling agitated, not being tuned in to what's going on, and like interpreting things that are happening between you and things that your partner is doing as threatening. This sort of has an asterisk because sometimes things are threatening. So when something you know really is otherwise safe, but you are interpreting it as threatening. So, oh, he turned over, he must not, right? Or she did that thing again. I know what that means. So it's like because this cognition part is gone, we aren't really thinking that clearly. So when people are coming down their ladders, they interpret things as more dangerous than they really are, of course, to keep us even safer. But something that your partner might do when you're in social engagement, all of a sudden when you're in mobilization without safety, seems worse. Being all up in your head about things, overthinking, you know that when you're having sex and you can't get into it. You're thinking and thinking and thinking. Wanting to get out of there, that's that flight. Thinking about leaving. Wanting to just quit and go. Maybe you can't stop moving. It's a little bit too much motion in you, and maybe that motion comes across as clumsy. And really, the feeling is, I'm too much. It's like the way that you're showing up in this experience with your partner, you're too much. And so what does freeze look like during sex without any of the social engagement, without the safety? Dissociation, checking out, not feeling your sensations, not being in your body to feel what it's feeling like, not being turned on anymore. Like it's already over for you. You're done. Having low energy, feeling irritated. Sometimes escaping into fantasy can be a symptom of freeze without safety. It can be, it's not always, but it can be that pulling yourself into a fantasy space is a method of dissociation. Not being able to talk, not being able to make eye contact, not being able to engage and say what you're liking, what you're not liking, what's wrong. Because really shutdown is about completely pulling away and being inaccessible. Feeling numb, feeling helpless, feeling bored, feeling sleepy or lifeless. And the overall feeling is, I'm not enough. And that's the mismatch. So in mobilization without safety, I'm too much, or nah, And in immobilization without safety, it's not enough. I'm not enough. I can't show up in the way that I need to for this. And so the thing that these two states have in common is that you have lost connection, right? You've lost connection with the experience, with your own experience, and in the relationship with the partner. And when I say partner, I'm not meaning committed partner or spouse or anything, just this person you're having sex with, because we're not talking about masturbation. We're talking about having sex with another person. So when I say partner, that's what I mean. You have lost connection with the partner. You've lost connection with your own sensation, your own pleasure, your own experience in this. And the goal here for both of these, whether it's mobilization without safety or freeze without safety, the goal is to maintain connection. So we've lost connection when we aren't up here also. And so the goal is to be able to be in these states and still be in social engagement, still be connected with another person's nervous system. And so that's what I'm going to teach you in this course, is exactly how to do that, how to maintain connection even when you are down your ladder. And I'm also going to teach you how to create the social engagement connection in the first place, how to feel safe at that very beginning, how to bring that into your relationship, period. And then also how to cultivate safety in your environment, how to cultivate safety in your other relationships in life, because those things also inform how much you can be in social engagement during sex. And the reason that this matters in the first place is because biologically, good sex comes from safety. Linda Savage says, in many ways, the transformative power of feeling safe is the foundation and perhaps the gateway to all spiritual sex. And by spiritual sex, she's talking about connection, bonding, the physical, profound feeling of orgasm, actually being able to be aroused, being sensitive, both emotionally and physically, having that beautiful space of transformation and transcendence and healing and embodiment all at once. The power of the sexual experience, the power of the orgasm, the power of intimacy, those are absolutely physically linked to having the parasympathetic nervous system engaged, to being able to be in social engagement. What I would like you to do after watching this video is observe and acknowledge. Right now, we're not looking to change anything. We just want to know what's happening. We want to know what the scene is, what our pattern is. And that's the observation part. And the acknowledgement part is that I want you to start to reframe the way that you experience intimacy, the way that you experience relationship, the way that you experience your own self, your own pleasure, as being really smart. That these behaviors that you have, whether they are healthy or unhealthy, feel good or feel bad, that they really have been developed to keep you safe. They are adaptations that you have created based on the life that you have lived this far. And so whether you are, wherever you fall on this spectrum of being able to be relaxed and enjoy sex, you are there, you are here, you're in the place that you're in based on the experiences that you've had. And you have a body, you have an entire system that has enabled you to survive until now. You have a deep, deep intelligence an adaptiveness that is within you. So I want you to, instead of seeing, oh yeah, I can't do that, and yeah, I'm terrible at that, and oh, that always happens to me. Well, yeah, okay, but there's a reason, and it's a beautiful reason. You've had the experiences that you've had, your ancestors had the experiences that they had, and now you are the way you are, you react the way that you do because of intelligence. What I want you to do with the observation portion is that I want you to chart a typical or actual sexual encounter from start to finish. Start to finish, and then also after finish. I'm thinking of finish as not just the point of when the act is over, but also the space afterward, right? A lot of women struggle with after the sexual encounter. There's this space of oftentimes dissociation, oftentimes sadness, or these waves of emotion that they don't know where they're coming from or what to do with them. So that's part of the finish for me. And the start is not necessarily when you start under the sheets or when you've taken your clothes off, but the start also includes the beginning of the connection between the two of you. The facial cues, the voice, the way that you're speaking to each other. The very beginning of that connection that is then leading us to the end of the sexual encounter. So when I say a typical one, that's not going to be as effective as actually having sex and paying attention now that you've seen this video. But you may not have the opportunity to have sex, and so if you don't, then I want you to really think about your typical behavior and really think about many different times you've had sex so that you can get an actual idea of what your pattern is. But if you have the opportunity to have sex, then I want you to do it, and I want you to pay attention to what's happening. And what you're going to chart is when you are feeling good, when you are safely engaged with the other person. That's one. That's when you're at the top of the ladder in social engagement, right? So that's probably before anything has started. That's this thing, the wink wink I'm talking about, or whatever it is that's starting up this period of intimacy. So social engagement at the top of the ladder, that's one of them. Another is when you are moving and feeling good. Rolling around, touching, stimulating, when you are moving and feeling good. Okay? Another is when you are moving and feeling unsafe. Another is when you are not moving and feeling good. So when you are completely still and maybe something is happening to you, or maybe that's in this finish portion, when you are having the orgasm or just after the orgasm, when you are still and feeling good, and then when you are not moving or still and feeling unsafe. So social engagement plus mobilization, social engagement plus immobilization, pure mobilization, and pure immobilization. And I just want you to get a feel for when you are shifting between these states. How much time during this period of intimacy do you spend in each of these? And you can even begin to start to pay attention to what is making you shift from state to state. What is it that brings the safety back online? If you like, but really the core of this exercise is observation. Observation of these states, when they're happening and how long they're lasting. And I want you to then journal about it. So I'm going to give you this sheet where you can keep track of, not while it's happening, after it's happened, that you go back and think about. You're thinking about it while it's happening, and then afterward you fill out the sheet. I don't want you to pause during sex and fill out the sheet. Because that's weird. And also it would throw off our observation anyway. So you're having sex and paying attention to your states, which also is going to affect how connected you are as well. I understand that. It's not a perfect experiment. observing your states or writing it down on this chart sheet. But then also I want you to take some time and write it out. Like describe the chart, describe how those things happened. First this thing, and then she did this, and then I felt this way, and then this happened, and then as soon as this thing happened, I've totally pulled away, but then this thing happened, and so it felt this way, so that you can really get the story. Have lots and lots of awareness around the story of it. That's going to make you feel much more empowered to insert these changes that we have coming up in the course. I will leave you with this. This is directly from Dr. Porges. These are the 3 steps that he says are biologically and evolutionarily sound. The 3 steps of the love code, he calls it. The first is that safety is communicated through eye gazing, facial expression, and a soothing or lyrical voice. The second step is to come closer and hold each other in a relaxed state. And the third is to bond through touch and sexual interaction. And so that's how it happens. Safety comes first, and then the coming closer and beginning to touch, and then the full-on touch and intimate expression of sexuality. And that's what holds the love. That's what provides this body, this somatic foundation for feeling love. So again, if the idea of tracking your states during sex feels overwhelming, you skip it. Or you press pause and you come back at a time when you think, oh, yeah, I could probably do that. Listen to yourself, because that's a huge part of beginning to connect with and heal our nervous system dysregulation, is listening to ourselves. First listen. First give the system what it wants to feel safe. And then you can begin the work. So I leave it in your capable hands, and I will see you next time.